Hello and welcome to Michael and Ivanka's Grand Podcast, a podcast where we sound the climate apocalypse alarm every single bloody week, whether you like it or not. My name's Michael Forrest.
And I'm Ivanka Magic.
What a pause. What were you waiting for there?
Why? What was wrong with the pause? I think I didn't pause.
Is that just the delay that we've got? All right, so the delay's pretty long then. This week we're going to talk about like nationalism and countries and like national identity and all that. I saw a video like patriotism versus nationalism, which I didn't watch, but hey, what are you going to do? Plus, yeah.
Oh, I was going to ask you what was in it. Sounds good.
Have you got any subjects you think
I do.
You might want to talk about?
Well, I was going to say identity versus nationalism. I was going to say tribes, countries, multiculturalism, stuff like that, all those kind of things, open borders,
yes.
Free movement, freedom, la la la.
Diversity. Also, Douglas Rushkoff, I heard talking on Team Human about the origins of the concept of a country, because it didn't always exist back before we had big maps. Hopefully that's enough to think that you want to listen. So let's play the intro music. How's it going, Ivanka?
It is going very well indeed this week. I've got news. I've been printed.
You're holding up a pink book.
A pink book called Signals, which is published by an organisation called Public Digital. And I have written an article in it called Using User Research by Ivanka Magic.
Well.
Age 44 and a half.
Doesn't say that. Where does it say you're from?
It doesn't say anything about where I'm from or whether I'm male or female or how old I am or anything like that. It just says, read the stuff in this book. Experts wrote it. And I felt I was like, my first reaction, I was like very chuffed because A, it's a nice colour pink as well. And B, but then my immediate reaction was, I wonder if my article is as good as everybody else's. Everyone else's sounds really clever. That was my immediate. That was my reaction number 2.
Yeah, that's normal. How did this come about?
This came about because I have worked with one of the founders of this organisation before, and I am an associate, which means I get to remain a freelancer, but occasionally do bits of work with them and through them and all sorts of things like that. And they are an organisation that advises many governments and large private sector organisations how to do big digital transformation things. And they did one of these last year, and now they've done another one. And they asked if I wanted to write something, and I said yes, I will. I'm going to say yes to this. I have things to say. That's what I said.
Well, fancy that.
And then there was one other good thing. At the latest OPEC meeting, OPEC Secretary General has complained of what he called unscientific attacks on the oil industry by climate change campaigners, calling them perhaps the greatest threat to our industry going forward. Boom! Get in.
Well, maybe he doesn't understand that it's going to run out soon. What's OPEC? Oil, petrol,
the oil, blah blah, whatever they stand for. And they are but the enemy has the enemy of all of us has realised that we are not letting them smash up our planet for no reason. Not for no reason, just because they want more money. In the negative column, June was the hottest month on the planet Earth ever since anyone's measured it. That's not good.
Certainly hot in here.
Cool. I have to say that my Adriatic island in the Adriatic is at least bearable. So there you go.
Okay, let's hurry this along.
Michael, how are you? How was your week? Can I have one very short story, please?
One very short story. I got to tell two. Do you know that thing I was saying about escaping prison and running away from the dogs?
Yeah.
And I've got to be running. It's dangerous, scary. My stepsister gave me some good advice, which was don't overuse the fight or flight system. Though it's designed for emergency use and not a way to live. And apparently, I am to look at Yerkes Dodson. So I think that's a good point. You can't just engage your emergency systems at all times, can you? That's not going to lead to goodness.
No, you cannot.
No, monsieur.
I did comment last week that you had chosen a rather stressful approach, but
yes. Also, I was looking at the apples in Sainsbury's, right? Royal Gala apples in Sainsbury's. I rarely look at the country of origin, and I looked at the country of origin, and there was a choice of Royal Gala apples. On the left, British, or the organic ones from New Zealand. So that's a bit of a disgrace, isn't it?
It is really.
We've got to stop doing that sort of thing. Oh, I want organic apples. Yeah, OK, well, in that case, your carbon footprint is going to be 2 million times more. Ivanka doesn't care about that. It's obvious to her. To me, it was interesting.
It is interesting because it is
shocking.
Well, I think for on the climate apocalypse clanging bells side of things, it can become, though, also very difficult to shop. If you're...
So. My aunt's trying to stop buying plastic, not the same one, a different one. And I'm like, yeah, right, maybe. It's like, the peanut butter's in a glass jar, but it's got a plastic thing. It's like, yeah, I mean, plastic is good for keeping food fresh. So, we do... It's like the frivolous plastic that we want to start with, not all of the plastic. Somebody bought my child a new Kinder thing called, not a Kinder egg, which already has plenty of not reusable plastic. There's a thing called Kinder Joy. Have you encountered this?
Yeah. It's not even a chocolate egg. It's a plastic egg. And then they've melted the chocolate and put the chocolate inside it, and then you scoop it out with a plastic spoon. And it's like plastic bonanza.
Yeah, so just let's not buy those ones.
Maybe Kinder could just stop making those ones, I think.
Maybe Kinder need to look at their life decisions.
They do.
Let's start talking about countries by saying, asking what a country is. Because if you think about it, it's pretty arbitrary, isn't it?
It's very arbitrary. My father taught me this thing once. He gave me a trick for doing well in your... So in the Yugoslav education system, at any time during the course of the school year, and in each of the 4 semesters, the teacher can just say, Majic, blackboard, answer these 3 questions, 4 questions, whatever, give you a grade, and that's your grade for the term. And so therefore one has to be in a constant state of preparedness. So for geography, my father taught me this trick, essentially. It's not really a trick, but, it was like, look, if you look at a country on a map, if the teacher, calls you up and says, speak to me about Japan, you can go, oh, well, Japan is capital city, because you can see everything from the map. Capital city Tokyo, it is in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. It is, whatever. It borders. Did you see me pause then? I was like, which ocean is it? It borders with China.
I just heard middle. I thought that's a bit of a stretch.
Yeah, okay, it's not middle. Yeah, it is. All right. But anyway,
it's right on the left.
I don't actually have a map in front of me, so
it's right on the left of it.
It's on the left. Yeah, it's on the rim of the Pacific Ocean. Blah blah. Anyway, by looking at a map of a country, you can talk about it for quite some time. Yeah. You can talk about how far. You do need some general knowledge, like it's reasonably north south. The climate's probably like this. It seems very mountainous. They're not famous for their flatness. You know what I mean? You can actually talk about a country quite a lot without knowing a great deal about it if you've got a decent map in front of you.
Well,
I don't know what that tells you about countries.
For the kids listening,
tells you how to get a mark on your geography.
You can tell, but it reminds me of Guns, Germs, and Jared Diamond's book, Guns, Germs, and Steel, which is all about the success on the world stage of different countries in relation to their the angle they are, whether they're horizontal or vertical, which I'm pretty sure
really?
I've mentioned before. But and the ones that are vertical tended to have very sort of extravagant palaces and temples, and like the Incas and things like that, like very sort of complex and interesting but localized societies, which were unfortunately very vulnerable to being invaded by the Europeans, for example, because you're on that vertical axis and you don't tend to go up and down very much because the climate changes too much and you're not really prepared for it. So you ended up getting these sort of very extravagant but brittle societies, and that's this sort of goes for Africa as well. These countries that sort of go up and down ended up sort of kind of suffering when the horizontal countries got involved, where like you can have quite a lot of migration along the sort of have similar climates all the way around. So sort of technology, like a lot more people were interacting, I think, and the technology developed a lot more. And also the immunity to disease and things like that was just a much broader.
It does make a lot of sense though, because if you take somewhere like Chile, where the people at the very bottom of Chile living in Patagonia, it's very wet, cold climate, and at the top there's like the Atacama Desert. It's like they've got nothing in common.
Yeah,
they wouldn't have the same farming, same diet, same. Nothing. So, yeah. Croatia's a funny one because it is sort of vertical. Well, it's more like it's shaped like a boomerang. So it's sort of got a vertical up and downy bit, and then it's got a thing that goes across the top. So the people across the top don't really like anyone else. No one really likes them either. But Croats famously don't like each other.
Well,
so,
I think that's most countries.
Or anyone.
The UK, Italy, I know that much about. What Rushkoff talks about, and I'm going to really probably butcher this, is how basically it's coming back to that idea of this sort of aristocracy wanting to maintain control of the wealth, and sort of inventing this idea that they could be the king. Like, okay, I'm the king of England, which goes up as far as there and comes down to here, and that means that you've all got to give me, I kind of get a stake in it. You've got to pay me taxes so that I can then create a huge army and go and invade places and do that sort of thing. But also you've got to use this money. You're not allowed to use your merchant money. So all these cities are coming up and these merchants are starting to get more wealthy and powerful. So the sort of old money goes, no, you've got to use the money with my face on it, or that's treason and we'll execute you. And you've got to pay interest on this money that we've created that you have to use. But it wasn't always that way. It was tribes and towns and villages and then cities, and then the rich people were like, hey, wait a minute. But then at what point did someone go, okay, this boundary is, I guess we are sort of biologically prone to sort of territorialism, as many animals are. It's as it gets more and more abstract as you sort of start to be able to write things down, that sort of thing, I suppose. One
of the things that I thought you were going to talk about was how the rich people will use national identity to manipulate people.
Yeah, it happens.
But not in the creation of countries. I didn't really, because I think the concept of an area occupied by a particular type of person who speak a particular language, or so, for example, if you take the Balkans being an example that I'm knowledgeable of, the Slavs moved to the Balkans from Central Europe, so sort of Polandish, but a number of tribes came along, and so they've kind of they're mixed up in the middle, but there's on the edges there's bits where people speak a very distinctly different, accent or different pronunciation, or we're like each other, therefore we're in the same gang, therefore you don't let those other ones into our bit.
Yeah,
kind of a
national identity is something that I think even in the UK we're sort of raised to be cautious of, like in the first place, because it's like England flags haven't got a good image. It's not a good brand, brandishing an England flag. It's become associated with football hooligans and like beating up ethnic minorities and things like that, really. And it's like, it's such an arbitrary sort of gang to identify with and also take credit for. It's like, yeah, you do sort of think, hey, Shakespeare, he was British and he did well, he's popular. Yay, England. Isaac Newton, yay, England. And, you sort of, for some reason, are allowed to take pride in the accomplishments of, let's face it, someone who had nothing to do with you. We won the war. Did you go and win the war? Like, at the risk of stealing Doug Stanhope's bit, it's like, we didn't win anything. We just kind of got born into, you know.
I find this topic very interesting because I have got these two identities, and three even, and B, because I have got the Balkans is completely broken because of nationalism, and it's not a nationalism that didn't really come from within it. So, for example, the nationalist gang was something founded by a Hungarian count. It wasn't founded by a Croatian or anybody who could call themselves a Croat. I think there's that side of things. I think the being proud of who you are, it's a very, very powerful feeling. It's a very powerful, tool. This kind of, and it's sort of, I don't know where it is. I don't know when it serves a positive purpose. I mean, I find it very difficult when it comes to conversations about Britishness or, the England and Lions and all this business. But then they're really rude. One of the things that Britain, I'm proud of in terms of my British heritage is that we're all supposed to be polite, well behaved. You know what I mean? There's this sort of established, reliable kind of, without digging under the surface of how you came to rule the waves. But it's like and then, it's a very, people sort of pick, it's like those Brexit Party MEPs turning their backs on the Ode to Joy in the European Parliament this week. And it's like, that's just rude. On top of everything else that it is uncivilised and it is rude. But then the very second I said that, I was thinking about those Extinction Rebellion people going into the British Parliament and just shouting over everybody. So maybe I only approve of rudeness if they're making a point I want to make. I don't know. So
you're saying Britishness,
ramble.
Britishness is associated with politeness. So how dare people representing our country not be polite? I mean, the fact that they're also sort of fairly overtly racist and doing all sorts of other things is also not ideal. Although, I mean, the thing about that story for me was how someone just I saw something about how this is what the Nazis did. Back in the do we need any clearer?
Back in the day,
this is the thing I want to say to people that vote for like a party like that is like, you realise you're just giving them power and they're just going to run with that. And can you not think about what they might extrapolate your vote into? Because like now your vote's done, like you haven't really got a say anymore. So what if you just let loose? How about having a think about it before you just make a choice like that?
But I think what's very dangerous about that, and what you see here on the Balkans, is 20 years after the war has finished, the most recent war has finished, and there have been many wars. You wind everybody up with that nationalism. Like you say, they run with it, they do what they want, but the people that were wound up are never recalibrated. They're just left with all the anger. They've fought a war. They've all these people that are shouting about Brexit and all that stuff that we don't like and we see on the telly. They are going to get more angry, and it maybe at some point there will be a de-escalation of all this insanity. But the anger that's inside those people will stay inside those people.
So you think it's
and
just
they
hard
have
to go
nowhere
back.
to let it out.
Yeah, it's hard to go back.
You can't. I don't understand. Like, I've got cousins, I've got family members, I've got people I went to school with. Like, they've been wound up to the point of going to war, and all that entails, and then they've now got to come home and not feel that, they've got nowhere to earth themselves, to let the static out. It's like just in there, boiling and making them more angry, and they're not getting what they were promised, and their war pensions aren't very good, and they keep getting cut, and nobody wants them. Nobody wants to take responsibility for these people that got wound up. And that's, and they're just left being angry and refusing. And then they get angry at everything. Yeah. The gays. Yeah. Anyone who's refugees. How dare refugees come through our country? It's like,
As someone who grew up very, very angry, it was like, you feel the anger, and then any little thing, you think it's that's causing it. So, like, you're just, because you're like, this the whole time, you just think, oh, it's because music isn't good enough. Oh, it's because that episode was poorly written. Like, you think that's why you're angry. So I think, like, the reason you're able to control people with this is we're a social species, and the way that works is by adopting. It's through stories and by adopting shared beliefs. It's by saying, okay, we all accept this story, and whether that's a religious story or the story of, okay, well, this border here is something that we're all within, and therefore we all share something. We're all on this side of the sea. I mean, at least like the UK, it's like at least we're on an island.
It's a very natural,
it's a very natural
border.
But like, you just think about European countries or just just tribes. It's like, well, it's just how the land is going, isn't it? Like, there'll be a river. Like, London's on a big river. Like, a lot of cities are on a big river. You get people together by telling them a story to having a story that lots of people like the idea of. So I suppose a question is what's so appealing about the idea of a country versus, like, why does that win out over the idea of just like local way of running things?
Well, I think one of the things that's very clear with, like you were saying about there's natural boundaries between countries, or where a country has sort of come into existence because there's a river, there's a mountain range, so the group of people limited by these geographic barriers have just got used to doing stuff with each other, speaking the same language, eating the same food, doing stuff, because people do need to trade with each other. Yeah. So they've become that's when it's sort of geographically limited. That's one thing. But then you get these places where somebody's got a ruler to a map and gone, like Africa, where they sort of went, okay, you have that bit and we'll have this bit, and the border is completely arbitrary. So the people either side of the border may not identify as similar people, so they won't have an allegiance to this arbitrary country because it's not a gang, that they are part of. They don't feel part of. They don't look the same, speak the same, all those things. I think the allegiance, I think part of the reason why you get all these funny inter-country, like, up north, down south, all that nonsense, is because actually people's allegiances are to people who sound like them and look like them and who they can communicate with, and not really to their country. That's something people have artificially created for them.
So you think it depends on the country, doesn't it? How much people want to get involved in the idea of it.
Indoctrination from when you're a small child. And what I think...
America's gross with that, isn't it?
Yeah, but then they've all elected to go over there. Do you know what I mean? That's a particular type of... That's a self-selecting group.
No, I mean just how they have to all say that national whatever allegiance Pledge of Allegiance in schools every morning.
Well, you've got to make it up when they're all completely different. Do you know what I mean? You've got to give them something, right? No, we can't speak to each other. Our sort of ancestral languages are not the same, but let's all repeat this chant, and that makes us the same. Look, we all know the words to the chant. Yay!
Music's good for that. Yeah, chanting songs. Songs used to be stories.
I was reminded. There's a sort of a rock musician-y type person on the Croatian bit of the Balkans, who sings these incredibly rousing nationalist songs. Yeah, and I want to know how to tap that. Yeah. Why do the sort of eco-activist songs always sound so very like, oh, the planet is... And then these are like... Rah!
Well, these are like... I don't know. I keep coming back to Game of Thrones with all this, and how, you kind of go back to pre-TV, pre-internet, all these times. Songs are the way that these ideas are transmitted. So the national anthem would have to be something that kind of, Rule Britannia, or these songs that people can all sort of start to sing in the bar together, become this sort of like uniting, like common understanding, common belief. How do we kind of transmit this now? It's sort of dogmatic, if anything, the idea of a country. It sort of just feels like a dogma to me now.
I think it serves some sort of administrative purpose, right? You lot there, you're responsible for making sure all these people have healthcare, passports, education, blah, blah. So you can do that bit, and then we'll do this bit over here, and you can do that. I think there are some sort of infrastructure-y kind of administrative tasks that need to geographically happen in a.
I would say that's
a contained area.
I would say that's true more in theory than in practice, though. If you think about how much wealth in the UK is concentrated in London, and just the rest of the country can just forget about it for a lot of it, and it does take the EU to come in and we're going to develop this area, while London's just going to kind of just keep getting richer and richer, and also kind of sucking up all the talent from around the country. I was born in London technically, but I wasn't educated in London. But so a small village kind of paid for me, and then I just kind of come to London, and London reaps the rewards. But in America, just I think a lot of places, it's the idea that something's national isn't always how it pans out in reality. In terms of distribution of wealth, in theory, that's what it should be. This even splitting of the spoils, but we don't do that. And it brings me back to that Japanese thing of where you can pay taxes back to the town that paid for you, instead of it all going into the city. And I think that's something that makes things a bit more coherent.
How do things I know America has states, and some of which can be huge, but UK we've got counties. Yeah. Are those a more natural? I'm using the word natural for the lack of a better word, but so again, I won't use the former Yugoslavia, I'll just stick to Croatia for now, but there are these sort of areas that have similar accents, I don't know, maybe have more or less of a tendency to go to church or whatever it is, but it's is there... is there something that's on a smaller administrative unit that would be more useful?
Well, I think we have the technology to be a lot more distributed than in the past. I think you could sort of manage things in it, it doesn't all have to be one big sort of spreadsheet like it used to be. I don't know what the...
But I think one of the if you're going to have this concept of country as some sort of administrative, this is where I think the usefulness of it is. So you've got some sort of infrastructure that's going to sort things out, take responsibility for distributing taxes, blah, blah, blah. Whether they do that very well or not is no one can measure. There is no then central unit that can go, oh, look, well, there is the UN. I don't know. I'm going to tie myself up in circles because ultimately... I can't see the point particularly. I was clutching at straws for something that, there's this concept of fairness that these concepts of countries rely on in order to earn their right to exist, maybe.
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of, like, different countries do things different ways, and it's an alignment to a set of values that, in theory, is what's collecting us together. So, the American Constitution, the different constitutions of different countries. Apparently UK's got one, but it sounds like a nightmare. Like we as a nation are defined by these these are our values, and this is what we want. Maybe there's a change in that there are more places to find people who identify with different values. So the sort of like national local thing has become fractured, and like the sort of national identity thing has become less and less meaningful.
I don't know. I can't formulate a sensible response to that. But yeah, maybe. I don't know. There's I thought I had more. Why do people? I get excited about. I get proud of watching. I don't know. Well, listen, but I do. I feel a sense of shame as well as pride in my. I am associated with these countries.
Yeah.
And so it's very hard to, it's not just a pride chest beating thing. It's a shame of association.
Yeah. We'll both happily apologise. Well, not happily, but we'll both apologise for Brexit to people that we meet from other countries. We'll say, yeah, sorry, I thought we were better than this.
But then I think people might argue then that we're being unpatriotic.
Yeah. So what does that mean? And who cares? That's what I want to know. Why do people care about patriotism? How does it benefit them? Like, this is something I'd quite like to understand, because it's always seemed a bit like gross to me as an idea. Like, I'm patriotic and therefore what? I'm going to die for my country, even though those people that are in charge have very different agendas to anything that would benefit me.
But it's like it seems like a masculine word to me. Like, that seems to serve nobody but the people collecting taxes.
People sending people to war. I just don't even know what the point of it is beyond getting people to fight for your, royal treasury.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to serve a great deal of purpose.
But it's something. But it serves a need. Like, that's the thing. Like, we do have a need for something like that in our lives. So even though it sort of may feel like a fairly arbitrary way of servicing that need, but we do need to feel part of something bigger than ourselves. And that's just a really core thing about human beings. So, like, what's a bigger thing to be part of than a country? So maybe that's it.
Yeah, rather than dissing countries.
We should
be finding the next thing.
Well, it's like nationalism isn't enough. It should be globalism. It should be we are the human race. We're on Team Human. We're planet Earth. Like, if we want to be part of something bigger, let's just be part of everything, rather than just like, it's just, why draw the boundary at the national borders at all?
Well, it does seem so powerless. It's like, take Yugoslavia that's all broken up now. Yugoslavia did a lot better than these individual countries do now. Like, let's say, just take football. They had a better team. Yeah. And now each of the individual teams have some really good players. If you had the ex-Yugoslav football team, it'd be pretty spectacular, probably. You know what I mean? It's like that sort of like divided is not a good thing. It's the opposite of cooperation. And if you're going to pick these, I think it's no less arbitrary than selection based on class or caste or any of those things. Whereas if you got people to think more globally on that team human, maybe that's really what I think that's really where I am.
That's the end point of this. And it's what you need, that Watchmen, like we need an alien invasion to kind of like unify us as human beings. But did you see Tony Blair's little kind of rant? I saw it this week. I don't know how long it's been around. It looked like pretty recent, but he was just saying, like, as someone who, I've been in rooms where power is the main thing, and this is just all about power. And like, if you like, China is going to be only by grouping together are we going to even have a seat at that table. If we're kind of like split up, then we're just going to be sat at the little table while all the grown-ups talk at the big table. And he was like very clear about it. And it's like clearly someone that's, you know, knows what it's like to be in a room with people with a lot more clout.
With power.
And just the fact that we think that we, by kind of dividing ourselves from the rest of Europe, that we're going to not just suffer from that. That's it's crazy talk.
What I don't understand, and what I'm sure is written somewhere in, you know, Leninist and Marxist kind of propaganda and ideology, is why the have-nots can't feel unified against the haves.
Yeah.
Why do we share allegiance with billionaires who are from our country? Oh, didn't he do well?
Yeah.
Hasn't he? You know, it's like he's not. You know, like if we all united against their hoarding of wealth, they would not be able to hoard wealth.
No, if we just rejected the belief that wealth was wealth, just went, actually, no, we've got a different system now, so yep. Don't know what those numbers are supposed to mean anymore. Like, good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck with
but
that.
It's like, how do you tap into that same power and say, look, you can't have... And I mean, you know, that you just can't be like that. And it's not about colour or gender or whatever. It's just about... No, as a human race, we want to survive. And that's the beginning and the end of the allegiances. Because if your government's not performing its task, then it doesn't deserve to be your government, and it doesn't deserve to be in charge of your country.
No. And we get Johnson. What's that going to be? That's just going to be. It's going to be nothing. It's going to be
hilarious, Michael. So much great telly.
Just flush the whole thing. We want to be part of something bigger, and you know, it used to be that country was the largest practical like group
unit
you could be part of, and then we've just been growing it, and let's embrace that instead of sort of like recoiling from it.
I think one of the things though that we have addressed sort of inadvertently, you know, by talking about the fact that people who talk similarly and dress similarly live in a similar area and all that business. I mean, there's something brilliant about travelling and experiencing different cultures, but I think that's where people need to be careful about confusing their culture with their country. And with an administrative region, you know, it's like that's not why you speak like that, or you make your cheese in that particular way, or you have more goats than cows. You know, you're like that because you share a culture that is, you know, that someone's then put some administrative infrastructure on top of and said tax please. But yeah, I think that's what we, in the same way that I think we're growing out of the tribes of political parties. Hopefully we're growing out of the tribes of countries, because
I mean it's sort of like the idea of a country has been slowly dissolving, and it does feel quite anachronistic to be suddenly sort of obsessing over that national border as the Brexit party, you know. So it's a weird thing. It seems weird to me, but yeah, like I suppose and then I suppose the sort of practical limits become when people literally don't speak the same language and can't actually communicate. Like that's where it becomes more difficult to unify. So I don't know what America's excuse is. I mean, I guess everyone speaks English, so that's what they make the boundary, and then they don't get angry about Canadians because Canadians speak English. They get angry about Mexicans because they sometimes don't speak English, even though, you know. So that's probably the biggest problem of our time, is this not speaking the same language. So as soon as we get this like real-time stick a thing in your ear and you can understand anyone, then hopefully that'll dissolve as well. We'll all be good.
Yeah. The thing about America that is weird, though, is none of the people, well, I'm not going to say none, because that's not strictly true, but I don't know what the percentage of Native Americans is, but the huge, the overwhelming majority of people currently living in the United States of America have been there at best for 200 years. As a family, like they are there. I don't know when. Okay, let's give them a couple. Let's give them 400. Let's give them 400. Let's give them Christopher Columbus or something. But you know what I mean? It's like the people went over, they occupied some land, and then they've artificially populated that land.
Well, they went over. They did. They killed everyone with smallpox blankets, and then murdered a lot of people, and then took over the land. There was a large population there, as we know, before we kind of got over there. But now who's left tends to be the people that had the immune systems. That
had already had measles. But we've got this. But I think that sort of speaks to the arbitrary. It seems like a very peculiar thing to create a culture around, because it's a. This is my prejudices. The current states, with the exception of the people that were, taken there against their will. They were either fleeing. Well, they're all either refugees or greedy. Mm-hmm. In terms of going there because they wanted to prospecting, or do you know what I mean? It's like, it seems to be like there was no other. But then maybe I've taken that, now that I've said it out loud, maybe I've taken it too negatively. But okay, they were seeking a better life, fleeing something, but that's what they had in common.
Malcolm Gladwell's podcast on the 4th of July yesterday was, as a recording, was about like the truth behind the Tea Party in the Boston, all that, like throwing the tea in the harbour and declaring independence, and how that was actually like criminal gangs, and it was a bid for kind of going straight, I think. But I haven't listened to the whole episode yet, but I think that's definitely one to be sort of like, I'm going to give you a new declaration of like understanding of your independence. But it was like Britain trying to kind of maintain control over, like you've got to ship your tea through. It was like drug dealers, basically. Tea is this addictive drug, and the whole thing is kind of revolves around that. But I think we've got enough to talk about without worrying too much about America. Even I think like we just the UK's suffering at the moment. It's weird though. Like you'd think. Yeah, how strong is the bond between people that do speak the same language, really, when there's military might in the mix?
Well, that tweet that I wrote, that had a resurgence in the week, and a load of people take it one of two ways, and that's and most often they take it very literally. It's this: there'll be no civil war in England, in Britain. There can't be.
Yeah.
Why? You're assuming a lot about the national identity, the national pride of the peoples that make up the United Kingdom. Also, this whole conversation about the Northern Ireland backstop and all that business. Yeah. Even though Northern Ireland is not in the same country, the same administrative unit as Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, the absence of a physical border, a border crossing where somebody checks your passport, creates the sense of oneness, which has a huge positive impact on, like, where my lot are from, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, we've got a border 7 kilometres from the house. One of the people's house is literally in no man's land, because it's like oh shit! It's like we've broken up the country. Now we need a border. Yeah.
It's like who loves dealing with passport check-in people? Who loves dealing with border officials? Anyone? Doubt it.
No, because there's this weird thing of protecting your, like, oh, you don't need to check passports for my sake. It's for their sake because they're baddies.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like. It's that sort of baddies thing again. Yeah. If you'll indulge me a second, because I think it is a bit relevant. One of my cousins shared something this morning. She's one of them that's got out and is off at university. But she shared a quote from I think it's from the Karamazov brothers, Dostoevsky. It's a bit gaudy, but I think it's quite nice. And it's only paragraph. So it says, love all God's creation, both the whole and every grain of sand. Love every leaf, every ray of light. Love the animals, love the planets, love each separate thing. If thou love each thing, thou wilt perceive the mystery of God in all. And when once thou perceive this, thou wilt thenceforth grow every day to a fuller understanding of it, until thou come at last to love the whole world with a love that will then be all-embracing and universal. It's like, that's what we should be aiming for.
Yeah, it's hard to... But then you've got to include Trump in your love.
Well,
and this is the thing that we've got to figure out how to do.
But I think about this often because I read this, I don't know, this morning. Then I went paddleboarding with my dog. So my dog and me on our paddleboard having a chat, and it's like, just because Trump and the likes make me angry doesn't mean that I shouldn't be. Well, let's take somebody easier. Like, I don't know. This was literally my thinking on my stand-up paddleboard this morning. It was like, just because somebody makes me angry doesn't mean that I shouldn't respond to them with kindness.
Yeah.
Because they, the anger only hurts me.
Yeah.
And the kindness might actually help them, or has a higher chance of changing them than not, than my anger. My anger just will get them fighting back, whereas my kindness might invite them into a conversation. Yeah,
and this was what I found intoxicating about this, like, Buddhist meditation, the metta bhavana, where it was like, okay, just think about someone that you like, and then love them, and then, like, go down the list until someone that you've really got a problem with, and try and send them love as well. And it was like, okay, if I can do that, like, sorted.
Yeah. I think that's true, though.
Yeah.
So fuck countries, more love.
Love
Sorry,
everyone.
Antoinette.
Listen. Right, I just want to end on this thing. So you just read something out, but I had a longer thing to read out. So sorry, listeners, you're getting stuff read out. My aunt Annette sent me. So she listened to our freedom episode, and a couple of days ago, I got in my email. She said that my mother wrote this poem called Freedom, and it was one of the reasons that I was thinking about, because it sort of covers some of the things we've talked about, but then it's got this whole thing about England in it, and I'm like, okay, so I don't really. It's weird that that just wouldn't have crossed my mind. So I just thought I would do a little bit of a posthumous poem reading, I suppose, and just like, and I sort of was. I didn't look at it straight away because I was like, some 20-year-old student is probably not going to be a good poem, is it? But I thought it was all right, and I thought it was like, probably, I wish it wasn't so late in the podcast because we probably won't have much time to talk about anything, but let's just have a listen to this. So I will try and read out a poem from my mother. O England, seat of freedom, which expression could suit you so well? Deep in your heart do I dwell, you the heart of my world and my freedom. But is freedom only for me? Is not my mother too free? And my sister and my brother, my fellow workers and my father, Mrs. Jones who lives next door? Is freedom for the rich but not the poor? But what is freedom? How is it that some people suffer, if the gift of this freedom's for all? This question I put to myself, and then, not satisfied with an answer, I ask my neighbour, and he tells me to love my brother, and moreover that yes, all men are free. But it is a limited freedom limited by laws and precepts. If there is to be peace, there must be order, and yet sometimes I do not feel like keeping order, although I can. Sometimes I do not want to submit to the wish of my elders, of those in authority, who rule me and guide me and show me the way. So then I rebel. Perhaps I'm angry or proud or offended. It is I who know better. I'll prove it and show you, and I'll not lift a finger to serve our dear country. And what's more, I'll get others to join in my cause, for more money, more leisure, less labour, more pleasure, and we'll all go on strike, and our country will suffer. But can this be freedom? I think it is serfdom. We are serving the devil, ourselves in disguise. If we were but healthy and wealthy and wise, in mind, soul and body, how happy we'd be. We'd be useful and worthy, and what's most, we'd be free. Tian McGilligot, December 1973. What do you think of that?
Hi. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm good. It just sounded like an episode of our podcast to me, just like going around the houses and trying to figure something out.
True.
And I don't know. It's like I'm like we probably would have had something to talk about, but
I think you would. I think but this concept of this I think it goes back to this. It's not just the countries thing. It's the control. You know, countries are a means of control above all else. So, you know, I sort of keep talking about them as an administrative unit, but it's not. It's a unit of control, a control mechanism for people.
In as much
stay where you are, don't move. No, you can't come in. No, you can't live here. No, you must pay this. No, run it. No zebra crossings. And you can't. You know, if the country is powerful. What she was saying about that bit about striking, and and then my country will suffer. And I was like, I don't know what this. Maybe we should talk about suffering.
Maybe. Anyway, this is just some words of a 20-year-old, like from the 70s. So,
I think they're interesting words. I think if anything, it does make it. I would like to have talked to that 20-year-old. I think we would have had things to say.
Yes. Well. Okay. Right, thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
If you like the podcast, go to grandpodcast.com where you can subscribe with the orange button. Where can people find you, Ivanka?
You can find me at Ivanka on Twitter.
Find me at michaelforestmusic.com and other places like YouTube. Anything else?
If you'd like to support our podcast in any way, shape or form, you can do things like writing ratings and reviews. You can tell your friends about it. You can give us some stars. You can also go to our Patreon that now we've carefully set up, and which is patreon.com. Where is it, Michael?
Patreon.com/grandpodcast, and that's like for a regular monthly donation, or I just like if you look in the show notes as well, I just set up a little PayPal donation as well if you want to do that. So I think that's paypal.me/grandpodcast, but just have a look in the show notes. If you fancy, you don't have to. It's just like I haven't got a job now, so you know, every little bit helps. This takes a lot of work. But yeah, beyond that, cheers for listening. See you next time.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.